All right, so this is part 3 of our factoring strategy. Let's just go ahead directly into problems. So let's suppose we want to factor. Let's look at this problem. Suppose we had 3x squared plus 2x minus 5. So 3x squared plus 2x minus 5. And remember, the first thing you got to do is always look for a GCF. All right, so when I look for the GCF is 1 here. Then we ask ourselves, how many terms are there? Well, there are 3, so we go directly to the two binomials. All right, so I go directly to this. And remember, I'm just going to go ahead and use trial and error and FOIL. So 3x squared, the coefficient of x squared here is 3, which is prime, so that makes this easy. The only possibility for 3 is 3 times 1. So we'll say this is 3x, and we'll say this is x. All right, now the last sign's negative. That means that these signs in here are going to be different. One's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. All right, and the outer and inner, when I do the outer and inner, I need the outer and the inner to add up to be the middle term. Okay, so I know that the last term is -5, but let's just look at the absolute value for right now. 5 is prime, so that's going to make it easy. So the only possibility for 5 is 5 times 1. So let's go ahead and put the 5 here and the 1 there and see if that works. So the outer term is 15x. The inner term is just x. And remember, the larger of these, 15 and 1, 15 is the larger. The larger of those takes this middle sign. That means that 15x has to be positive and x has to be negative. And when I add them up, I get 14x, which is not what I wanted. I wanted a positive 2x. So that order is not correct. So let's try another one. Let's try again, 3x and x, but let's switch these. Let's switch the 1 and the 5. So let's put the 5 here and the 1 there. And again, look at the outer and the inner. Remember, the last sign's negative. That means that these signs in here are going to be different. So this is 3x. The inner is 5x. So 5, which is larger, 5 and 3, 5x, then has to take this middle sign. So that means this is a positive 5x, and this has to be negative. And if I add them up, I do get 2x, which is what I wanted. So these terms are now in the correct order. So I've just got to fill in the signs. So if I want the inner term, the inside to be positive, that means that 5 has to be plus. So that has to be a plus 5 right here. And if I want the outer to be negative, that means that this right here has to be negative. All right, and so that's the answer. You're done. Okay, so let's look at this example, number 2. Suppose we had x squared plus 9xy minus 36y squared. So x squared plus 9xy plus 36y squared. Okay, so the coefficient of x squared is 1, so that's going to make this easy. Again, the GCF is 1, so I'm going to go directly to the two binomials. But remember, you do have two variables. You have this is an xy, so the first term is going to have an x, and the last term is going to have a y to get that y squared. All right, so I know that the first has to be x times x. Again, I'm using FOIL. So the f is going to be okay right now. The outer, again, I'm just going to go ahead and look at the absolute value of this. So let's just think about 36. Possibilities of 36 are 6 times 6, 9 times 4, 12 times 3, let's see, 1 times 36, and I think that's about it. 2 times 18. So 2, 3, we did the 3, 4, 5 doesn't go into 36, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have the 12, and I think we're good. All right, so those are possibilities for 36. All right, so let's just go ahead and try the 9 and the 4 and see if that works. So if I put a 9y here and a 4y here, notice I put the y's because y times y is y squared. The outer is 4xy. The inner is 9xy. Remember, the last sign's negative. That means these signs are going to be different. That means one's positive, one's negative. and I need the larger to be positive. That means this has to be negative. But when I add them up, I get 5xy, which is not what I wanted. All right. So switching the 4y and the 9y is not going to help because the first terms are identical. So that's not going to help. So let's do the 12 and 3 and see if that works. All right. So I get xx, 12y, 3y. So far it looks okay. Do the outer and the inner. Now remember the last sign's negative, so these have to be different. So the outer this time is 3y. The inner is 3xy, 12xy. And the larger of these will take that middle sign. That means that 3xy has to be negative, and when I add them up, I do get 9xy. So this is correct order. I just got to put in the signs. So in order to get a negative 3xy, this has to be negative. In order to get a positive 12xy, this has to be positive. And so there's your answer. All right. So you can always check yourself. Positive 12y times a negative 3y is a negative 36y squared. So that takes care of the outer of the last. The outer and the inner we already did. All right. So the outer is negative 3xy. The inner is 12xy. When I add them up, I get 9xy. All right. So you're done. That's number 2. Okay, number 3. All right, suppose we had 1 minus 8ab, 1 minus 8ab minus 20a squared b squared. So 1 minus 8ab minus 20a squared b squared. Okay, so the GCF is 1, so I'm going to go directly to 2 binomials. All right. Now, usually in all the problems you've done so far, the square term was listed first. I'm going to leave it like this. It's in ascending order in terms of the A's and in terms of the B's, so we're okay. Okay, so let's do trial and error and FOIL. So what times what is 1? Well, there's only one possibility, 1 and 1. All right. Now the last sign's negative, so remember our discussion. The last sign's negative. That means these signs in here will be different. And the outer and the inner, when I add them up, has to be a negative 8ab. So let's think about now. I know this is a negative. The last term is a negative 20a squared b squared. So I know that the coefficient here is a negative 20. But let's look at the absolute value. Look at 20 for right now. So the possibilities for 20 are 10 times 2, 5 times 4, 20 times 1. Those are the possibilities for 20. So let's just go ahead and try the 5 and the 4 for right now. So now be careful. See how this is a squared b squared. So you really need to say 5ab 4ab. So make sure you look at that. So it's not just 5a 4a or 5ab and 4b. It's got to be ab times ab is a squared b squared, and 5 times 4 is 20. All right, but again, remember the outer and the inner has to be, one has to be negative, one has to be positive. But if I look at this, though, I'm going to have an issue because I know the signs have to be different. So I know that the larger has to be this middle sign, negative. But when I add them up, I get a negative AB, which is not what I wanted. So that would be the wrong. These two are the wrong ones to use. And switching them is not going to help either because these were the same. The first were the same. So let's use 10 and 2 instead. So let's try this, 10 and 2, and see if that's going to help. So 1, 1 is 1. So I'm going to say 10AB, 2AB. The outer is 2AB. The inner is 10AB times 1 is 10AB. 10AB, the larger of these, will take the middle sign. And when I add them up, I'm going to get a negative 8AB, which is what I wanted. So this is a correct order. This is a correct order, so I just got to fill in the signs. In order to get the outer to be positive, this has to be positive. In order to get the end to be negative, I have to have the subtraction or this to be negative. And so this is your answer. You're done. You know, you can always check yourself. 1 times 1 is 1. For the last, a negative 10ab times a positive 2ab is a negative 20a squared b squared. And the outer and the inner we've already done. Okay? So that's number 3. All right, number 4. Suppose we had 9 minus 10x squared plus x to the 4th. 9 minus 10x squared plus x to the 4th. Okay, so the GCF is 1. I'm going to go ahead and leave it in that order. So I'm going to go directly to the two binomials. All right, and let's use the idea of FOIL and trial and error. So give me two numbers whose product is 9. Well, there's 9 times 1 and then 3 times 3. Let's go ahead and try 3 times 3 for right now. So 3 times 3. All right, now the last term, so that takes care of the F. The last term, though, I need, now last sign's positive, that's going to be easy. So the last sign's positive means these signs here are the same, and they be that middle sign. So they both have to be subtraction here. Because a negative times a negative is a positive, and when I add them up, a negative plus a negative is a negative. But this is x to the 4th. So let's think about x to the 4th. X to the 4th, what times what is x to the 4th? Well, x squared times x squared is x to the 4th. And you knew you wanted an x squared because this is an x squared. See this x squared right here? So x squared times x squared is x to the 4th, because when you multiply like bases, you add exponents. 2 plus 2 is 4. Okay, so that's where we're at. All right, now, and now if you look at the outer and the outer is, was that supposed to be a 10? Let me check and see if that was supposed to be a 10. Let's see. Okay, so the outer and the inner, let's see, the outer and the inner, so the outer is a, that is supposed to be a 10. The outer is a negative 3x squared, the inner is a negative 3x squared, but the issue is that when I add them up, I get negative 6x squared. That's not what I wanted. So that's not the correct order. All right, so let's try, instead of trying 3 and 3, let's try 9 and 1. So 9 and 1, all right? Okay, so again, the last sign is positive. Last sign is positive, means these signs in here will be the same, will be negative. So they're going to be subtraction. And again, x to the 4th, we're going to say x squared. All right, so that's where I'm at. Okay, now, you remember, now that's not the answer, because you remember this last thing right here says check each factor. Can be factored again. Okay, well, look at this right here, this 9 minus x squared. 9 minus x squared, I'm going to do the work here. 9 minus x squared, remember it says repeat the process. So 9 minus x squared is 2 terms. So check and see if the difference of 2 squares or the difference of 2 cubes. Well, it turns out that this is the difference of 2 squares. So in other words, this becomes, I can fill in the parentheses, so this becomes a 3, this becomes an x, and now I see that's a difference of 2 squares. So this becomes 3 minus x times 3 plus x. And so that goes here. 3 minus x times 3 plus x. And you see this right here? This 1 minus x squared? That is also the difference of 2 squares. See 2 terms? There are 2 terms. And it's the difference of 2 squares. Because I can fill in these parentheses. This is the difference of 2 squares right here. I can fill these parentheses in. 1 times 1 is 1. X times x is x squared. So this becomes 1 minus x times 1 plus x, and that goes here. So 1 minus x times 1 plus x. And so this right here, this 9 minus 10x squared plus x to the 4th, the complete factorization is this. That's your complete factorization. 3 minus x times 3 plus x times 1 minus x times 1 plus x. Okay? Now, if you had, and there was no issue with this, but if you had put this in descending order instead, okay, oops, that's squared, in descending order, we would have gotten this instead. So watch what we would have gotten. So x to the fourth times x to the fourth, I'm sorry, x squared times x squared is x to the fourth. All right. Now, again, the possibility for 9 is 3 times 3, 9 times 1. We saw that 3 did not work, so we're going to say 9 and 1. All right. And the last sign is positive. That means these signs here have to be the same. They're both going to be this middle sign. And again, if you check yourself, this is negative x squared. This is negative 9x squared. When I add them up, I get a negative 10x squared. Okay? So notice how that looks different than this right here. You see how this was 9 minus x squared, this is x squared minus 9. This was 1 minus x squared, this is x squared minus 1. All right? They're both correct. Nothing wrong so far, but you still got to go further with this because this is the difference of two squares and that's the difference of two squares. So this x squared minus 1, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it. X squared minus 9 rather, times this x squared minus 1. So this becomes x minus 3, x plus 3. This becomes x minus 1, x plus 1. And so that's your answer. So either one of those is correct. Either one of these is correct. All right? So they're both the factorization of this. It's just that this looks different than this only because you put this in descending order, and over here you left it in ascending order. Ascending order. Okay, going from smallest to largest. Okay, but they're still both correct. All right. Now I just want to kind of explain to you how this and this are the same thing. You'll notice that x plus 3 and the 3 plus x are the same, right? Because addition is commutative. And this 1 plus x is the same as x plus 1. But 3 minus x is not the same as x minus 3. They're opposites. And the same thing here. 1 minus x is not the same as x minus 1. They're opposites. So that means this. If I take, I'm going to go ahead and write this right here. If I take this right here, I'm just showing you, you're done. You can either write it like this, but I'm showing you that this is the same thing as this. So let's just go ahead and rewrite this. Okay, so right now we know that these are the same. These are identical. Those are identical. I just want to see, can I rewrite this to look like this, and can I rewrite this to look like this? All right, so remember, 3 minus x and x minus 3 are opposites. That means if I take out a negative 1 from here, if I factor out a negative 1 from here, I get negative 1 times a negative 3 plus x. Negative 1 times negative 3 is 3. Negative 1 times a positive x is a negative x. And I can rewrite this as negative 1 times x minus 3. Okay, so notice the x minus 3 is here. And over here, same thing. These two are opposites. So if I factor out a negative 1 from here, I got negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. Negative 1 times a positive x is a negative x. And then rewriting this, I got negative 1 times x minus 1. So this and this are the same. This and this are the same. And a negative 1 times a negative 1 is a positive 1. So that means that I can rewrite this. As x minus 3 times x plus 3 times x minus 1 times x plus 1, because 1 plus x is the same as x plus 1. And then the negative 1 here and the negative 1 here multiplied together is a positive 1. So we could say times 1, but we don't put it. And so that looks exactly like this. Okay? So I just showed you why these and these are the same thing. So two factors look totally different, but they were opposites of each other. So if you take out a negative 1, multiply them together, negative 1 to negative 1 is 1, and what you're left with is exactly that. Okay? All right. Let's look at this one. Okay. Let's suppose we had x to the fourth minus 14x squared minus 32. All right, so same idea as the previous one. It is in descending order. The coefficient here is 1. The GCF is 1. So I can go directly to the two binomials. X squared is what I'm going to use because the middle term is an x squared. Okay, now the last sign's negative, so one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. The last term is a negative 32, but let's just look at the absolute value. So let's just look at 32. There are several possibilities. There's 8 times 4. There's 16 times 2. There is, so we did 2, 4, 8, 16, and I think that's it. All right, so those are the only two possibilities. Well, I mean 1 times 32, but okay, so those are the only 3 possibilities for 32. If I try 8 and 4, it's not going to work. You could check it. So the outer is 4x squared. The inner is 8x squared. Remember, the signs have to be different because this is negative. So that means that the 8x squared has to be negative. And when I add them up, I get a negative 4x squared, and that's not what I wanted. So 8 and 4 did not work. So let's try the 16 and 2. So if I try the 16 and the 2 this time, I'm going to get x squared, 16, 2. The outer is 2x squared. The inner is 16x squared. The larger of those, remember, takes that middle sign, so it has to be negative, and when I add them up, I do get a negative 14x squared, which is what I wanted. So in order to get for the outer to be a positive 2x squared, this has to be a plus. In order for the inner to be a negative 16x squared, this has to be a negative. And now I'm going to rewrite this over, so I get x squared minus 16 times x squared plus 2. Okay, so remember though, this right here says check each factor. Can it be factored further? If yes, then repeat this process. So if you look at this right here, this is the difference of 2 squares. So I can go further with this. So this is x minus 4 times x plus 4. And this right here, don't say that's the sum of 2 squares because no whole number times itself is 2. So that's not the sum of 2 squares, but I still can't factor anything out. The GCF here is 1. So the answer is x minus 4, x plus 4 times x squared plus 2. So that's your answer. All right, so this right here, the answer is this. Okay? All right, and let's look at one more. All right. Let's suppose we had 27 x cubed, that's a 7, 27x cubed minus 125 y cubed. So 27x cubed minus 125 y cubed. Okay, the GCF is 1. GCF is 1. Then remember, if you have two terms, always look at it. There's a subtraction, and then I see some cubes. So let's see if this is the difference of 2 cubes. So you always want to do this part to help you with this. So can I fill in these 2 parentheses? So what times itself 3 times is 27x cubed? The answer is 3x. What times itself 3 times is 125y cubed? The answer is 5y. So since I was able to fill in these parentheses, this right here is the difference of 2 cubes. Okay, so that means I can factor the difference of 2 cubes as, and if I say f cubed minus L cubed, it's f minus L times f squared plus FL plus L squared. Okay, so this is your f and this is your L. So remember, the difference of 2 cubes is a binomial times a trinomial. And this trinomial, once you take out the GCF, this trinomial, you can't do anything else with it. So f minus L is your binomial. So 3x minus 5y goes here. times, all right, now let's do the work for this. F squared means F times F. So if F is 3x, that means 3x times 3x, which is 9x squared. So that goes here. You got to say 9x squared. Plus F times L. F times L. So F is 3x, L is 5y. 3x times 5y is 15xy. So that goes here, 15xy. And then plus L squared means L times L. If L is 5y, 5y times 5y is 25y squared. So that goes here. All right, and that's your answer. You're done. Okay, so that's going to conclude this part.